Good morning and welcome to Hope, Faith, and Joy Daily Devotion with me, Pastor Amanda. This morning, Friday morning, we are in chapter 19 of the Gospel of John. And it's a day to journey with Jesus to the cross. And we kind of leave off where we were yesterday with Pilate again trying to tell the Jewish leaders that, you know, we don't need to do this. It doesn't have to happen this way. And yet the Jewish leaders then have this moment when they say that we have no king but the emperor. So as we realize, they've misplaced their trust. They have bowed down to a different authority. And but what's really kind of almost interesting is in bowing down to this authority, they should be following what Pilate has said to them. Don't do it. So really what they're saying is we don't bow down to God. We don't bow down to the emperor. We bow down to what we want. Because, Pilate was like, we shouldn't be doing this to this man. And so, yet they put it like it's back on to Pilate's shoulders, like he's the one. And it's almost like what Pilate, it says that when Pilate heard these words, I lost my place, that he himself became, he was more afraid than ever. So, like, Pilate became afraid of these people, of what extent they were willing to go to. And I think that's interesting that when people get their minds set on something, it doesn't matter what's right, what's wrong, anything. They are just, and we see this. It's even more than mob mentality. It is like just this focus of this is what I have decided I want, and nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. And it's a really sad moment throughout this. And so what we see is just that it doesn't matter. Just what I want. It's a very individual, personal drive that happens within all of this. And it's among a few. It's among a few that are pushing the majority. Because most people aren't thinking for themselves. They're just doing this because that's what they want. And so I find it interesting too, also in John, we find that Jesus carries his cross. And in the Gospel of John, he makes sure it says, and carrying the cross by himself. Because if we remember back to Luke, we have Joseph of Arimathea who helps Jesus. But in John, it's this very solitary, lonely, rejected, humiliated Jesus that we experience. And so what we see happening again and again in John right now is that John is trying to put this contrast up there, or comparison, that Jesus really is the Messiah. And so we see time and time again in this chapter. And so that the scriptures will be fulfilled. So that the scripture will be fulfilled. So that the scripture will be fulfilled. So he's pointing out every little thing that happens to Jesus in reflection of the Hebrew scripture, because he wants to make sure that even though the people aren't calling Jesus Messiah, he's like, proof. Here are the facts. Here are the facts. And as we know, people don't always listen to the facts. But anyways, as Jesus continues to fulfill the scriptures along the way, people won't see it. They can't see it. And again, we see Jesus still concerned about his mother. It is just the most human response that the first son of his mother, that it's his responsibility to care for him. That was what culturally, humanly was important. And he doesn't neglect that job in the midst of his crucifixion. Is that not a beautiful moment? He does not neglect his humanity in the moment that he's headed towards his divinity. And so he has one of his disciples take on the responsibility of caring for his mother for the rest of her life. And I just find that to be so beautiful, because how often in the middle of a stressful day, week, month life, we begin to neglect other people because of our own stress, of our own hurt and pain. And we don't want to deal with other people's hurt and pain. And, it's hard. It's hard. Here, Jesus is dying on a cross, and he's still got concern for other people. It's pretty impressive. For a big example to set up for, but it can kind of help us change our perspective when we feel that we're suffering too much at times, because there's always someone else. And we know Mary's not dying, no, but she's watching her son die. And so there's this beautiful moment that they share that he goes, I'm still going to take care of you. Makes me want to cry, I'll be honest. So I'm going to keep moving on so I don't cry this morning. And so what we find, again, John is just repetitively saying, so that the scriptures will be fulfilled. Like each little thing, the stabbing in the side, the not breaking of the legs, the not tearing of the cloak. All these things are so that the scriptures will be fulfilled. And then we have the burial of Jesus. It's kind of like this kind of very solemn moment today that we end on. And we have two different disciples that come and assist with Jesus being taken to the tomb. And we have Joseph of Arimathea, who we find out is a disciple, but he's trying to still stay hidden. So we know that there's fear still among the disciples. And which is important for later in the story, but he overcomes his fear in order to help Jesus, to bury Jesus. And so there's this tension you can see in that, where Peter just went off and denied, Joseph has to overcome his fear to do that. And then we have Nicodemus, who we know was also, came to Jesus by night in secret, but now he's openly coming and working with Jesus. He's bringing mixtures of myrrh to bury him and everything. So we see that even at the moment of death, transformation is happening. There are people who are stepping out of their fear. There are people who are stepping out of their secret life into the light of saying, this is my leader. This is my Messiah. So even though it's a really sad moment, it's these sparks already are flying, that transformation is happening, but I find it more interesting that sometimes these sparks that we're getting right here are coming from not the core 12. It's on the outsides. It's on the margins. And these little sparks are going thrown, that people are behaving differently. People are reacting differently. And I find that interesting, that the sparks of transformation don't happen in the core, but kind of happen on the outside. I got to think about that some more. Got to pray on that one some more. And so then we find out too, which is really important to John, very important to John, because we talked about this, how he's praying in the garden all the time. Now he's being laid to rest in the garden. So we have the Garden of Eden. We have the garden of when the final garden in Revelation, but right in between the garden where Jesus is laid for death and resurrection to happen. So like when you're reading this, this is like there's this like these little sparks are just flying. It might be midnight in our hearts, it might be midnight in our minds, but sparks are flying that something's going to happen. Something's going to happen, and it's going to be amazing. But there is still pain to be experienced. There's still hurt to be experienced. But as we know, that does not have to have the last word. It doesn't have to have the last word. And if we can just catch onto a spark, amazing things can happen. And so that's where we're going to leave off this weekend. And I hope that you can look for the little sparks of transformation that are happening in your life and around your life. And then we'll come back on Monday morning, and we will come to the last 2 chapters of John on Monday and Tuesday. So I look forward to getting to finish the Gospels with you next week. So have a beautiful weekend. Thanks for joining me, Pastor Amanda, with Hope, Faith, and Joy Daily Devotion.